after I moved into this home, I had the worst sinus infection I've ever had. The mycotoxins that were found at the site of the leak from a surface sample test were exactly the strains that were found in my body. There was carpeting throughout the entire bathroom, and I said, listen, I'm a healthy home advisor. I can't take this listing until you rip up the carpeting and I see what's going on under here. I'm not the right person.
Hey, and welcome back to the Awakening Spaces podcast. Today, I interviewed Rachel Klein, who is a real estate agent who serves the Denver, Boulder area. She is with Mile High Modern, and we go in depth on tips and tricks, whether you are a buyer or a seller. She gave some really amazing tips that I'd never thought about for sellers that I'm really excited for you to hear. This is going to be great for you if you're looking for a new home, if you are getting ready to put your home on the market and want to get the best money that you can. This is going to be such a good episode for you. And this is the first real estate agent that I brought on to the show. Rachel is very unique in that she is a healthy home advocate. So she is advocating for her clients, for her buyers, for her sellers on both ends to help them find and create healthier homes to sell. She's gone through her own journey and experience having mold illness. She's lived this. So I'm really excited for you to listen to this episode. I really loved it. I think this is going to be a great resource for anybody who is looking to buy a new home. And I also want to just preface that I am 32 weeks pregnant right now. After we stopped recording, we started having the conversation of, I was like, I'm so sorry. I'm having word finding issues again. So you might pick up on some of that in some of my pregnancy recordings, but I've been struggling so bad with finding the words. It's one of those things that if you've gone through an experience with mold, the PTSD is real, because that was one of my biggest symptoms when I was dealing with mold exposure. And at the end, Rachel and I were actually talking about that because she said that was the same thing that happened to her, that she had struggled so hard to find words when she was going through her healing journey. I just wanted to share that because I know that anyone who has gone through a mold experience knows how that can feel, how frustrating that can be. Rachel I think she has 1 or 2 children right now. She assured me that it will get better, but it does really feel like mold PTSD. Anyway, I just wanted to share a little bit about the realness of what's going on behind the scenes, but let's dive into the episode. I think you're really going to love it. Well, welcome to the podcast, Rachel.
Thank you.
I'm really excited to chat with you. You are my first real estate agent that I've had on the podcast. Where do you serve?
I'm Boulder County, but I also work in Denver as well. And thank you so much for having me on. I'm such a big fan of yours, this podcast, and all the material that you produce. And it's just so incredibly helpful to so many people. So thank you.
Thank you. I
Yeah.
appreciate it. This is going to be such a valuable resource for people this episode, too. I talk a lot about what people can do, what people should look for when they're buying a home, but you're in this every single day and you've had your own experience that led you here. So I would love to just start with that. What do you call yourself technically? Is it like a healthy home advisor or a
Yes.
holistic real estate agent, or like what is the technical term for what you do?
I use both, just depends who I'm speaking to, but I'm a licensed real estate agent in Colorado. I'm based in Boulder and serve Boulder County as well as Denver. I have other agents that specialize in this that I refer out in other parts of the state, and building a network of other like-minded agents nationally. So we are starting to grow. So reach
Amazing.
out if you're looking for someone.
Amazing. So how did you get into the healthy home world? Were you always health conscious? Did you have an experience that you want to share with us?
I definitely have always been health conscious, but before I was a licensed real estate agent, I purchased a home in Boulder, Colorado, and there was a leak detected in the utility room from the condensation pipe not being securely in place. And that leak, unfortunately, was not fixed as it should have been. So it was consistently dripping on the OSB subfloor over my unconditioned dirt crawl space. Now,
Mm.
I know these were 2 major red flags that I know of now, but I didn't know at the time. And now I would definitely advise a buyer to investigate that or walk away. In addition to that utility room leak, There was also history of a roof leak, pipes that had burst that were listed in the seller's property disclosure as fixed. But when we asked for documentation, they didn't provide any. All of these are really big red flags that I work with my buyers on discussing how to navigate. But at the time, I was not given that advice. 11 months after I moved into this home, I had the worst sinus infection I've ever had. It lasted much longer than typical sinus infections, and the intensity was beyond anything I've ever experienced. I'll talk a lot about this, but there is this theme in my life of really tapping into my intuition and my knowing. And in that moment, I knew something was seriously off in my body. Shortly after the sinus infection, I went from peak physical and emotional health to debilitating exhaustion, gaining significant unexplained weight, joint aches where I had never ached before, migraines, depression, and the real kicker was short-term memory loss. So that was the real wake-up call. And what I've learned time and time again is that when you stop your rational brain from taking over what your body is telling you, which looks like this is me getting older, this could be perimenopause, this could be my thyroid failing. When you quiet the noise and you listen to your body, it will tell you when something's not right. I'm so thankful I listened to my intuition, and I'm beyond grateful. I was seeing a phenomenal functional medicine doctor based in Boulder who also happens to be an expert in treating mold illness. And you've had her on your podcast, Dr. Terry Fox.
Oh, we'll link that episode in the show notes for anyone
Yes.
who wants to check that out.
Yeah. So luckily, I was under her care for thyroid and hormone support. And when I mentioned the migraines and memory loss, she immediately tested me for mold. So then I tested my entire home, and the mycotoxins that were found at the site of the leak from a surface sample test were exactly the strains that were found in my body. I'm grateful that after 5 months of symptoms, I was able to get tested and then identify what was happening, because I know so many people struggle with it for years before they really understand what's affecting them. And that's incredibly frustrating. I then moved out of my house for 5 months and had to remediate and remodel. And that journey led me to you. And so incredibly grateful for your expertise in navigating how to safely rebuild my home, because there are so many decisions to make, and doing it while you're sick and trying to heal, it's just like you have decision fatigue and you're completely overwhelmed, and it's deflating because you can't operate at the level you used to. Everything's so exhausting. For people listening that are going through this, give yourself an enormous amount of grace while you're trying to heal and manage uncharted territory, and find a support team to help you through it. Shout out to my support team, which my family, my friends, Dr. Fox, Jessica McQuaid, Reza with Eco Air Solutions, and you. So thank you so much.
And that's the thing too, like when you're going through this, it can be such a long journey because you don't know what's going on. And then you start to put the pieces together, and then you start to find a team. And I think when we go in to buy a house, we think we only need this one person, or we're just going to rely on this one thing. But honestly, like having a lot of different expertise coming in and helping support these very large decisions can actually save you so much money up front.
Yes, 100%. I completely agree. It's investing in doing it right up front and the first time. So then these way bigger surprises that are oftentimes 10x what you're investing early on in to do your due diligence.
Yeah.
It's just going to save you time, money, stress, and your health.
Yeah. When you were buying your house that made you sick, were you your own real estate agent for that? Or were
No,
you?
so this was before I was an agent.
Okay.
So it was really interesting timing, because this happened while I was actually studying for my license exam.
Interesting.
And I'm like, is this a sign that I should
Yeah.
not be going into real estate? No, not at all.
The
But
opposite.
Yeah, the opposite. It really helped me appreciate what so many people are going through and
Mm.
realize that it was an incredible struggle and journey, but I learned so much from it. And now I'm educating other agents how to advocate for their clients better. I feel like I've carved a niche and not just helping other agents like educate what's happening in the landscape of real estate today, but also helping buyers and sellers. It's really created a niche for me. Oftentimes it's a lot more work, but it's also very rewarding because your health and your home is so critical and important. So to be part of that process to help make it better for people is incredibly gratifying.
It's honestly so amazing because you're probably educating so many people who have no idea that these things impact their health, because the first person that someone reaches out to when they're buying a new home is they want to find a real estate agent. Some people might seek you out because they know this is your niche, and some people might find you just because they need an agent. And for the people who are just finding you and coming across you needing an agent, what a beautiful addition to the knowledge that you're sharing with them, not only on the financial aspect and like all the other things that an agent supports their client with, but like, hey, also, did you know that this could be a costly repair and actually create an impact on your health? Or you're opening their eyes, and they can take that information and do what they want, but you have that experience that you can share with them that I think is invaluable for people, because half the time people just don't know until they know. And they
Yes.
find out the hard way. With healthy home related stuff, environmental illness, it's always like you just didn't know what you didn't know.
100%. And I know a lot of wonderful real estate agents. My colleagues, I'm going to give a shout out to at Mile High Modern, are incredible advocates for their clients and operate at such a high level of professionalism. And our brokerage culture is really about continuing education. And so I feel very thankful that I'm in a company culture that is always moving the needle forward for learning how to advocate for their clients' special needs. And this is one of them. And from my own personal experience, when I'm meeting with clients, I tell them about my history and my healthy lens. And I let them know that I'm going to flag things that are concerning for me when we go through this process, and I'm going to give you options. And so my job is to make you as informed and make the process and the risks as transparent as possible. And you get to decide what you want to do with that. And
Right.
even if I have clients that are not mold and chemically sensitive, they all appreciate that because they don't want hidden surprises. I feel like you can bring that to all your clients. It's just this next level of understanding building science, right? I recently presented to my older office and I asked them if anyone had heard of a building biologist. And these are top of the line, incredibly experienced full-time professionals, and only one person had.
Wow.
And so getting the word out to real estate agents, and I know we've talked about, like, I would love for you to create trainings for continuing education, but there's definitely an education piece that is missing that really can have such a profound impact if we're just educating agents on what to look for and how to navigate it and which experts to enlist, because it's really not our job to be inspectors or, environmental specialists. So really understanding how to vet experts and create that resource for our clients.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of what you do is what I do as an owner's representative. We're just representing our clients and educating them. It's not necessarily that I'm the expert in every single thing, or neither are you, but we know enough about the topic to guide people in the right direction. And that alone, I think, is really invaluable, because it can be really hard to figure out, who do we go to? Who do we call for this? Can this guy do both of these things, or do I need two separate people for this? Yeah.
Exactly.
And like, how much is this going to cost?
Right. What are the costs? What are the timelines? Yeah.
Mhm.
Guide people through that is a profound skill set. Yeah.
Yeah. How do you guide people through like what's actually something that can be repaired versus something they should just walk away from? What kind of information do you use to guide them through that decision?
Much like what you do with individual clients, I first discuss what are your health goals and what are your health sensitivities, because as we know, that's going to look a lot different from every person. So some people may be concerned with EMFs. Some people are concerned just with moisture. So it really varies. understanding what their goals are and what their sensitivities are will tailor my approach. But
Mhm.
I'm still flagging anything that I see because that is my responsibility as a licensed agent is to flag things of concern and discuss it and then bring in experts to test it and to really do a high level inspection or testing. So my job is like the first line of defense. But for my own personal example that I had given, I'm from Chicago and I had never seen a dirt crawl space before. And I've owned another property in Boulder and it was a basement and again, did not have a dirt crawl space. So I was completely floored and I raised it as a concern and I was advised, oh, that's typical. Well, yes, it's typical, but and I know you've talked a lot about this, if I'm working with agent or clients and they love the home and it has an unconditioned crawl space, then I'm going to make sure that it's tested thoroughly and also advise my clients that the first thing they need to do is encapsulate it. And then also monitor the moisture. So having moisture meters and regularly checking it. Anything that we're looking at, if it's a red flag, I talk about what are the options to address your risk. What are the steps then that you need to do once you've moved in to monitor and take care of your home? And I think that's also a huge piece that is not talked about with clients about, okay, you moved into your dream home. Great. Now what do you do? I know you have some guides that help clients, and I highly recommend people check them out on your website and talk with your agents of, okay, I have an Adobe style home. How am I supposed to upkeep that? I have this type of siding. And if your agent, they can't have all the answers, but again, they can point you in the right direction of learning how to take care of your home so that you don't have these costly surprise projects. Yes. So it's a big piece of home ownership that I think is overlooked.
Oh my gosh, so overlooked. I love that you're bringing this stuff up with people because I've worked with a few different agents in the area since I've moved here 11 years ago now, but never did I have anyone bringing those types of things up to me. They would bring up important things, definitely important things, but from a health perspective, things that not only improved the durability of the home, but really improved the health of the home. And yeah, dirt crawl spaces are so common here. I was surprised when I found a basement that had a window into a dirt crawl space.
Oh, I know
I'm
you
like,
need to bring that home buying. Here's what I found. You shared the carpeting in the bathroom,
oh, yeah.
which
Do you see
again,
that a lot?
I've seen that once so far. And
Okay.
someone who was wanting me to list their property, and I took a tour, and there was carpeting throughout the entire bathroom. And I said, listen, I'm a healthy home advisor. I can't take this listing until you rip up the carpeting and I see what's going on under here. I'm not the right person.
Oh,
So if there are things that obvious, I'm not willing to take that risk on. And I already
yeah.
see the roadblocks ahead. So he went ahead and ripped it up and renovated the bathroom.
Amazing. Wait, I want to talk about this a little bit because that's very unique too. As a real estate agent, you could lose a lot of deals doing what you do. Walk me through the process of if someone comes to you and they want you to list their house, how far do you make them go
Great
in
question.
terms of health?
What I recommend in this market, and you have to understand that every market is different. And in 2020 to 2022, people were waiving inspections altogether
Yeah.
and getting outbid by cash deals. And it was like the Wild West. So in today's market, buyers should be very thankful that there is time to hire inspections and time to hire specialists and to work that in. And buyers should really take advantage of that. So if you're on the fence and this is the time that allows you to do this level of due diligence. On the seller side, I'm a big believer, whether you're sensitive or not, is that you should really always do a pre-listing inspection as a homeowner and getting ready to list so you know what you're going to come up against in the inspection objections.
Smart.
So that way, you know, my furnace is on its last leg. I've got some drainage issue. And then you decide what are the projects that are health and safety and are in my budget to address. Even if you don't address all of them, showing buyers that you have a pre-listing inspection, what do you think that does for buyers? You see that the homeowner is taking care of the house at a
Mhm.
really high level, that they're proactive, and that they're transparent. So you have more trust in buying the home because you see how they're communicating and relaying
Mhm.
information. So that
Absolutely.
would be like one of my biggest tips.
That's a great tip. I never thought of that. Even for my own home, like we always keep up with the maintenance. And I always thought, like, okay, well, when we go to sell this home, I'm going to share my book that has all of like when I've maintained everything and where we buy the filters and who we call, because I think that's great. But taking it another step of like, we even got a home inspection before you had a home inspector and we addressed these things that came up. That is beautiful because I think that's the hardest thing is as a buyer is there's not enough requirement for transparency.
Yeah, and every state is different. So I know this is a global podcast. And so you really have to understand your state regulation. For instance, I know in Illinois that if you have a mold problem and you remediate it, it's considered fixed. So you don't have to disclose that you ever had a mold problem.
Mm.
Some states do that. Some states, you have to list any history and any knowledge of incidences, whether they were remediated or not. And Colorado is that type of state. It's actually gotten more in a larger scope for the seller's property disclosure, where you have to list ever knowing of anything for different categories. And the
Mhm.
best way as a seller to protect yourself is when you purchase a home or a property, hold on to that seller's property disclosure from the people you purchased it from and include that with your seller's property disclosure. You really cover yourself from a legal perspective. And again, you're showing that level of transparency to buyers. And oftentimes you'll see, oh, wow, they had some issues. They addressed that quickly. And wow, they've been living in the home for 6 years and they've done all this work. And it tells a story of how you lived and took care of that home.
Wow. These are great tips. I love this. This is great for anyone selling your home or planning on selling a home. Keep these things in mind. This is really, really great. So, when you're just starting to work with somebody, are you kind of educating them in that like initial consult with them? Like, hey, this is kind of what I do. This is how I operate. And these are some of the things that we would look into.
Yeah, exactly. So I share a little bit about my experience, not to scare them, but just to inform them how I got here and
Mhm.
people I've studied with, and how understanding building biology and how your home works as a living, breathing entity really affects my ability to advocate for their interest.
Mhm.
Understanding what their goals are. If they're health conscious and health minded, I'm asking, what does that look like for you? You want a sauna and a cold plunge? Or are you interested in a full house water filtration system?
Mhm.
Are you concerned about the air quality? What type of filters are being used? If a roof was it replaced with a class 4 hail resistant, and to what depth? Like, was it the standard 3 feet or did they go the full entire roof? Asking questions to really understand what their goals are and then helping them fine tune the process based on their sensitivities. I have
Mm.
clients that come to me that are so sick and can't be continuously re-exposed by touring properties. So I have a process where I
Mm.
questionnaire of what I'm looking for them. I do a ton of legwork upfront before we even get to touring. So I'm looking at what are the materials of the home, what are the age of the materials, getting the seller's property disclosure before I even set up a tour, talking with the listing agent, really finding out more about the history of the home and the owners. And this really has been a game changer. I have an incredible environmental specialist that I've worked with and who goes on pre-walkthroughs with me. So once a home has passed that step, my questionnaire and the investigation phase, we then tour it and he will flag, areas of concern. So then I will go back to my client and talk about these things and again, give them options. This is how they can be mitigated. This is how much we're talking. This could potentially lead to bigger issues, give them scale and scope. If it passes that test, then I take them on site. And usually it's for more than an hour so they can really feel what does the home feel like to them? Because
Mhm.
I know I've heard on other podcasts, like Some people are really sensitive to spray foam. There's different materials that can react with different individuals. So being in the home and getting a feel, like how does it feel to breathe, your skin,
Yeah.
all the things. And so once that hurdle has been met, then we consider an offer. I want people to know I represent both sellers and buyers, and I want to be respectful of the sellers as well. And I don't want to just write offers, then get to inspection, bring in specialists, which then you have to terminate. That takes
Mhm.
up a lot of time, money, and, energy. I think doing all of this legwork ahead of time is beneficial to both the buyer and seller. It's a lot more work. I get it. And not every agent's going to want to do that. But I have found that with that process, I'm helping buyers find homes within 2 to 4 showings.
Oh, wow. That's great for a buyer, regardless of if they're sensitive or not,
Yeah.
to like just
Yeah.
have a better, thorough understanding of what's going on in the home. I
Yeah.
think it's really helpful. So then are you feeling like you're losing deals? Do sellers or listing agents get annoyed with you, or do you feel like pushback from them, or what's that dynamic like?
I haven't lost a client either
Okay.
on the buy or sale side. And in this market, listing agents are more receptive to when you test a home and you have documented mold and you ask for money to repair that, either in a price reduction or concession. And the market that we're in, that is happening very often. And
Good to know.
so both the sellers and the listing agents are receptive to having dialogues, especially because working with an interested buyer you're already under contract with is going to be a lot easier to find common ground than to terminate, have to relist either by, as a homeowner, you have to disclose now that it's a material defect. And if you want to remediate, then that's an out of pocket cost and you still have to disclose it. It's more time, money, and risk if you don't work with the active buyer. That's why I think it's actually a really good time to be a buyer if you have these concerns. I get questions all the time on the renting market, and it's not my specialty, but I do know it is hard out there because
Mhm.
very different standards and regulations, and typically the rentals are not maintained at a level that a
Yeah.
homeowner does. It's heartbreaking, and I'd love to see better solutions there.
Absolutely. I know people always ask me, like, can you help me with a rental? And I've attempted a few times just helping people, but that on its own requires its own special type of consultant who can
Oh,
help
yeah.
people figure out the loopholes and whatnot. And then again, there's different laws and regulations around renting in different states. Yeah, that's why I've helped homeowners
Right.
because there's so much out of your control when you're renting. And it's really unfortunate because there's so many people who need to rent.
Yep. And I know you've talked a lot about this, but mold can happen within 24 to 48 hours of high moisture or consistent leak and organic material. And so, what I also educate my clients with is that if you have a water leak or you're using moisture detectors and it's 55%, getting informed immediately and doing something within 48 hours is going to drastically decrease a chance of this becoming a really bad problem. It's really learning all the different ways, like a whole water leak detection system with a shutoff, those moisture meters, learning all the different tools to notify you of things happening so that when it does happen, you know what to do. And there's not a lot of time that goes by to make it a problem. So it just kind of goes back to educating people, and then they have that information and it's within their own comfort zone of what they want to do.
Yeah.
But everyone I've worked with, again, even if they're not sensitive, really appreciates that level of information and how to care for their home.
Absolutely. So when I was looking for a house, my strategy was going to be, okay, let's find something with pretty decent bones that we can fully gut so we know what's behind the walls and leave enough room in our buy budget, like go very low on our buy budget, essentially so we can factor in potentially 100 to 200K for a renovation or maybe more in today's market, probably more depending on the size of the house. But But that was kind of my strategy because I felt like every home had some sort of issue. Now you're working in a market, I'd say a more luxury market than one that me and my partner were looking in, I would say. So maybe you're not seeing that as much, but are you supporting people with homes on the lower end? And I guess in Boulder, that is like $1 million. Like we're not seeing less than $1 million in Boulder.
There are definitely properties that are
Right.
less. Those are usually condos or townhomes,
Mhm.
or they're complete guts. So
Exactly.
yeah. But I've worked with people in Denver and I've worked at every different price point,
Okay.
and you can find mold in a $10 million home from one incident that went unnoticed. And you can find a really clean townhome in Louisville that I found that just needed very small remediation. And it was in a part of the home that was easy to remediate where it wasn't affecting the rest of the house. There are good options out there. You just need to know how to find them, and you have to do a lot of work up front to narrow the pool and not
Mhm.
get frustrated. Your strategy is 100% what I recommend to people is that don't buy at the top of your budget. I know you think the nicer, the less problems, but again, problems can happen in any price point and any level of build. I feel like the higher end, higher quality homes, it'll be less frequent
Mhm.
if it was built right. And there's probably systems in place that notify you. So it probably does a better job of alerting you. But it's not to say that you can't take some of those strategies and technologies and put them in lower price point homes. So don't buy at the top of your budget, and definitely, I would say, leave $100,000 is a safe cushion for remediation and renovation. But it really just depends what size house. If you're talking about a 2,000 square foot house, I think you could, reserve 50,000. It's just understanding. And, for a lot of people that are sensitive, we're looking for smaller homes because they're easier to maintain. They're easier to clean, bigger home, oftentimes bigger risk.
Big time. And like, unless you have somebody who's maintaining that for you, you're hiring a company to do that work. Bigger does not always mean better. There's just so much to do. I mean, a $10 million home can be just as bad, we'll call it bad, with water damage or have as much risk as just a $600,000 home. It really doesn't matter.
Well, let me differentiate there. At any price point, you can have a leak. And so that can happen to any home in any climate. Now, when you're looking at higher priced homes, they typically are built better, right?
Mhm.
There's an architect, sometimes there's a building biologist. You have other specialists that are involved and really carefully thinking and planning of how all the materials and systems are working in your house. So I want to be very clear that I will tour homes in luxury and ultra luxury that I'm blown away at, that I'm taking pictures of the utility room because they're using copper piping and they're organized so well. And it's cement utility room with a massive silver drain. That gets me excited. So yes, they can be safer depending on how they're built. And there's typically a lot more budget and thought in the materials that they're using. And one of the biggest red flags for me, and I know you've talked about this, is spray foam. And I recently toured a beautiful $3.5 million home in downtown Boulder. I was very excited. The level of renovation was really well done on the inside. And then when it came to the basement where the laundry room was, and this is an older home that was renovated, and you could see there was a little bit of a crawl space, which we wanted to do a deep dive on. There was spray foam everywhere as their main insulation. And so for me, when I was talking to my client who is highly sensitive, I explained the cost of removing all of that insulation and putting different options in. They don't want to do that. So it really just depends how thoughtful the design process is and where people stopped investing. And in that home, it was the insulation.
Yeah. The spray foam thing is tough too, because it's not as easy sometimes as just being like, let's remove the insulation, because that insulation would maybe acting as their air control. And if they didn't do anything else for air control, then now we are messing with air control layer and thermal control layer. So it's just messy. It can be really, really messy. crazy. It's so common here. I'd say
Yeah.
Boulder too. It's like energy efficiency, mecca.
Yeah.
Everyone's using spray foam. Very
Right.
standard.
And so, I don't know if it's like responsibility, but trying to educate agents, like after you've seen a home, typically you give feedback to the listing agent. And I let the listing agent know we loved the home. It was done on such a high level inside. We were really disappointed to see spray foam used as the main insulation. And that's a deal breaker for my client. It's just making them aware
Yeah.
that buyers are noticing this and
Mm-hmm.
it is a concern.
Love it.
I guess the positive spin on all of this is that buyers are becoming more educated in this space and
Absolutely.
they are looking for systems that allow the home to function and last, that provide safe air quality and that are not off gassing. And so you have more informed consumers, which will then make more informed builders, and it will continue and ripple out in that direction.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. That's all we can do. Educate the people who are going to be consuming this stuff and help bring awareness because ultimately they're going to be the ones that drive the market. If they're not buying it, then they're going to have to change the way they're doing it. So I love that. I love that. There's always a benefit, even if the home doesn't work out for someone, you're spreading the ripple effect is happening with everybody that you come in contact with on these projects or on these properties. So what are some of the biggest things that we're seeing in Colorado that are like, we got to walk away? Sorry, can't repair. What are some big ones that you're seeing?
The dirt crawl space is not a walk away because I'm still living in that house and it's encapsulated and I monitor it. So that's a red flag, but not necessarily a walk away. I would say the repeated freeze and thaw cycles in Colorado. If there's water drainage issues, you can't see that in the summer. That could be a potential red flag, and really investigating the roofing, the overhangs, the decking, the basement, ceilings. Like one of my greatest tools, this is, I know, not a shocker to most people listening, is walking properties with a flashlight and, looking at ceilings and paint jobs and is there water staining. But yeah, the repeated freeze thaw cycle in Colorado, you could get 3 feet of snow and then the next day it's 60 degrees is a big thing to navigate and to spend extra attention addressing. Flat roofs are common, I would say, in more modern contemporary design, and they could be a concern. So you really want to make sure, what is the drainage? How is it maintained? How are the seams looking? Are they completely sealed? Oh, properties near hillsides at the bottom of a mountain, you really need to look at runoff, seasonal groundwater, retaining walls. So all of those, again, they deserve extra attention, and it just depends like how it was dealt with. Would you
So
agree?
I would agree. I love that you're bringing up the freeze thaw cycle. So my favorite time to buy a home is in the winter because I think prices are better. Sometimes it's not always the best stock available, but I love that you could see things in the winter. So how do you navigate that? Like, are you busy in the winter? Are you more, I feel like summer and spring are like the busier times, but you can see so much more in the winter too. So what's your
Yeah.
thoughts on that?
There's always pros and cons to buying and selling in any season and in any market. Typically in Colorado or Boulder, Denver markets, the spring is the busiest, but that actually now starts in February. So the spring market starts rolling in February, really starts to build peak inventory for April, May. Summer starts to get a little quieter, and then it'll pick up right after Labor Day. So September and October is kind of like a second spring. People are
Yeah.
very active, but it also depends at what price point are you looking. Like luxury and ultra luxury are a little bit more buffered from those cycles. People just buy when they need to and when they want to. If you're not in that category, then again, there are pros and cons. Like you notice, there is typically less inventory around the holidays, Thanksgiving and the winter holidays in December. But people that are selling are really motivated, and people that are looking to buy are really motivated. So you get a lot of cooperation, even though the inventory is more selective. And so work with a local agent that is really dialed into the market and knows all the ins and outs of the type of product and price point that you're looking for, in addition to everything that we're talking about.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. I actually did a podcast episode with somebody yesterday. Her name's Erica. If you're listening, it may come out. You may be able to listen to that one, but we did a whole episode on flat roofs. She's a building envelope consultant, and we talked all about flat roofs. They're so common here, like you said, and people are putting decks on the flat roofs because we do have beautiful summers here and people want to utilize that space. There's a lot of potential issue there. It doesn't necessarily mean you need to walk away from the property, but you really need to understand the ins and the outs of all of these things before you buy a property. One of the things that I was seeing a lot of when we were looking in certain neighborhoods were homes that were built like in the 60s, 50s, and they're not waterproofing on the exterior, the basements. And there was all basements in these old homes. And even if I were to gut everything on the inside, it's still not going to solve the problem of what was applied on the outside to protect from water. And like you
Right.
said, we get a lot of snow, we get a lot of freeze. How is that draining?
Mhm.
So you're looking at having to potentially rip up and dig out all around the foundation of the home. So are there times or ages of homes that you will recommend to clients just based on their sensitivity and based on how the home was built? Or what are you kind of walking clients through in that
Yeah.
regard?
Most of my clients are preferring newer homes because there have been fewer people living in it. And so fewer incidences and time for
Yeah.
things to happen. But they're not wanting brand new because they might be sensitive to off gassing. So a year to 5 years, I think, is most ideal. But a year to 10 years, depending again what materials were used, I try and find out like who was the builder? What's their reputation? Do they have filed complaints? So anywhere from a year to 10 years, I think you're seeing more safer options being used. And again, it's not off-gassing. I do try and look for properties that don't have carpeting, like wood floors. So
Mhm.
people, if you're out there, ditch carpeting,
Yeah.
use wool rugs. They work amazingly. People don't want to take the risk of finding a home that checks all the boxes. Then they're going to have to rip up the carpeting in containment. And when you do that, there's always a risk that there's a bigger problem underneath. So yeah, trying to look for homes that don't have carpeting is a big one. I would say anywhere you live and not just in Colorado.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Just depends on like what you're looking for. If you're trying to find something that has very limited issues, then finding something newer is probably going to be a safer bet. If you're looking to gut something, you're just going to get in the walls anyway. It might be a different conversation that you have with people, but
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. If you know you're taking it to the studs,
Hmm.
you really can work with a lot of properties, and that's where you would come in.
Well, I've got one for you. So, how often are you seeing, because this is something else we ran into, like humidifiers added on to the ductwork, and swamp coolers are also very common here. What are your thoughts on those? And what do you usually talk to clients about when you see those things?
Swamp coolers are a red flag for me for sure. They can leak. You're just pumping in moisture. It's a constant moisture source, right? So for a lot of my clients, that's we walk away from. And humidifiers are a little easier to work with because you can remove them altogether, which I've done in my house. And then I have stainless steel humidifiers for the room. And so I can maintain and regulate it like
Yeah.
way more dialed in than a whole house system. So I think it's easier just to pull humidifiers out. But you tell me, like, are there more things that we should be doing in that camp? And I'm also curious to hear your thoughts on whole house fans because I know
Oh,
people will do that instead of swamp cooler. So yeah,
yeah.
I'm gonna
Oh my
push it
gosh.
in.
So with the whole home humidifiers, for me, it would depend on whether I'd be okay with it or not, if I can remove it. If the house had rigid duct installed and you could clean the ductwork and ensure that there wasn't an internally generated source of microbial growth from that humidifier that was just blowing through all of your ducts, yeah, you just have to do some more testing. Every home that we saw with it, I ended up walking away because I was like, we just don't have the budget
Right.
to deal with this type of HVAC
Yep.
situation. And again, this is where it comes down to like who you're talking to, what you're planning. Like if you're really looking for something that's just move in ready,
Right.
you
Yeah.
probably want to walk away from something like that. But if you have it in the budget and you're like, well, we're going to replace all the ducts anyway, we're going to do all this HVAC work, fine.
Right.
Great. That's kind of my thoughts on that. I don't know if there's like a right or a wrong, but that's just me, like my own personal concern with the whole home humidifier. We also saw a lot of attic fans, and somebody is going to be listening to this podcast who's probably going to correct me on this. And I would love to do a whole episode on this because that was something I wasn't sure about when we were looking and we were seeing these. Because what's happening with these whole home fans is we're sucking all this air out of the house. We're putting the house under negative pressure, like
Mhm.
a lot of negative pressure. So think of a clear plastic bottle, you're sucking through it. The water bottle is like crunching in and wants to come in because you're sucking all the air out of it without bringing air back into it. The air is going to try to come from somewhere. So it's probably going to try to come from cracks in the walls, underneath your floor, your baseboards, from your outlets, and in areas where it's just not clean in your house. So every time you put that fan on, are we just drawing dirty air from somewhere else? You know, it's not something that I would ever recommend from a new build perspective. Like if I were designing a new home, I don't
Right.
think it would be wise to put one of those in. So I'm not really too sure, but I was seeing so many of those here. And
Yes. What's happened in Colorado is, I moved here in 2013, but I also lived here 98 to '01, way back in the day. And you didn't need air conditioning in
yeah.
Colorado, and that's changed. And so for older homes that don't have great ductwork or don't have AC, then you're looking at mini splits and whole house
Mhm.
fans and ways to retrofit the problem that we're now in is having really extreme heat stretches, which, woof, it's been a hot one here.
Yeah, it's so hot here in the summer. Like the humidity isn't that high, but we get up in the hundreds regularly for weeks, especially being pregnant here this summer. I'm like,
You're
I'm
feeling
dying.
yeah.
I grew up in West Virginia and I just went home for a baby shower that my mom threw me in. I thought, oh, it's going to be so hot and humid back home. I don't know how I'm going to handle it. I was like, this is a reprieve from Colorado. I can't believe how much hotter it is here.
And going into the mountains is a totally different story,
Yeah.
from Boulder. If you're going up to Netherland, Lyons, then it can change 15 to 20 degrees, right?
Hmm.
So, as you know, there's all these microclimates and it really
Yeah.
vary. But yes, I think back to that issue is that homes built more than 15 years old, they might not have really great ductwork.
Hmm.
So we're trying to find solutions to cool the home.
Yeah. It's really a delicate dance of trying to
Yeah.
figure out what to do and how to fit it all within your budget. And
Yep.
I love what you're doing. I love that you're educating people on the front end because this is all really, really important. And these are really hard decisions to weigh alone. So I think it's so great that you're doing that. So thank you so much, Rachel, for joining. I
Yeah.
always end on our closing question. What is something that you are working on internally that is helping you to either better yourself or evolve your soul? Is there any little nugget of wisdom that you want to share with listeners to provide a little bit of awakening and wisdom?
Yes, I love this question and I love this layer to the work that you do. I work with an incredible somatic guide
Nice.
who's really helped me tap deeper into my intuition. I highly recommend her, Stacey Levy. If you're interested in this type of work, we can link it in the notes. And a theme that has been really present for me over the last few years is being at peace with the timing of life. And
Mm,
don't always happen as fast as you want them. My timeline for healing from mold took much longer than I wanted. My renovation was delayed because of reasons out of my control. I waited 5 years from the time I said I was ready to find the love of my life, but I did. And he was so worth the wait. So my real awakening for me is trusting my intuition. And
mhm,
every time I ignored it, I had really hard lessons to learn and a really painful journey. And every time I followed my intuition, it has benefited me with ease. When I step back and look at my path, I realize that the time frame was essential and that the delays were actually redirection opportunities to put me back on my path. The lessons were really meant for me. So my parting words of wisdom are really trust the process,
Mm,
lean into the lessons that are meant for you to receive, and find gratitude in the timing, however long it takes.
yeah. Oh my gosh, I love that. And it's like the people who are going through, whether it's a mold remediation or renovation or whatever it is, where it feels like just a can of worms is unfolding for them. It's so hard to see that. It's so hard to just trust your intuition, trust the process, let it unfold, and let go of control. It's
Yeah,
so hard.
so hard.
But when you get through it, and you will, if someone's listening to this and they're struggling with this right now, you will get through it. I promise you that you will look back and you will see that there was a silver lining somewhere in there.
For sure.
You will always find that silver lining, and it's really hard to do. But I love that you brought that up and that you found that in your own life because it's not easy to get there.
It is not easy. I'm not sugarcoating it. There were a lot of hard lessons, and I was oftentimes frustrated with how long things were taking. And
Mm.
operating from a place of growth mindset and abundance really shifts from the scarcity thinking. My grandmother's favorite line was, "This too shall pass." And
Mhm.
knowing that there is an end and there are chapters to your life and there are endings to really stressful challenges, and finding that support team to get you through it and figuring out the self care steps that are really needed to get you to a place where you're just operating from a much healthier place. You're not in fight or flight. And so just taking those baby steps of caring for yourself and your family and getting to places where you can make decisions coming from being informed and with clarity rather than reacting in scarcity and fight or flight, which
Absolutely.
really hard, but baby steps.
Yeah, I think once you educate yourself too, once you feel confident in like gaining the knowledge, because like when you're going through this, you don't know what you don't know. And then you start to learn things and you realize, like, wow, the more I know, the less I realize I actually do know. And then you kind of get to a point where you're like, okay, but I feel like I have enough information now to make decisions from a grounded place and not from a place
Yeah.
of like scarcity and
Yes.
fear. That's why I think whether you've gone through an experience like this or not, it's so important to be educated on your home, your surroundings, your environment, what could go wrong, how to repair things. And same with our bodies too. Like
Yeah.
even our health, we should all have a general baseline of like how our body works, what foods work for us, what
Yeah.
supplements we do well on, like how much exercise feels good on our bodies, just little things like that, because you're interacting with these things every single day.
Yeah, I'm so thankful for all the people that you bring on this podcast. They've really been incredible and they're all pieces of the puzzle. And so
Mhm.
it's just putting it all together and digesting it in your own time and trying to integrate it in your life and your decisions in the best way you can. And know
Yeah.
that you're not always going to get it right. You just keep learning and evolving, right? It never
Exactly.
ends. It never ends.
More lessons to learn every time. Even some of like my closest colleagues in this space doing work similar to me, experts in different fields, experts in the home, they come across things in their own home where they're like, well, didn't realize that could happen. It's still news to me. So you're doing okay. You're okay. Even even people who are experts in this stuff find this stuff challenging, confusing sometimes, and all homes are different. So yeah, it's a lot to take in. And what you shared too reminded me of a podcast episode I did with Brownell. We did an episode on wishing. She talks about it as wishing, but it's like manifestation.
Yeah.
And it's all about like coming from a place of abundance when you're doing it and not coming from a place of scarcity and lack. And if you're interested, if you're like, how do I get out of this headspace though? Because it's hard to,
Yeah.
obviously work with somebody like we will link in the show notes who you're working with, work with somebody who can help you tap into that for yourself, but also go listen to that episode because she gives some really practical tools on ways you can kind of rewire your thinking around it. Because I think as important as the physical environment is and doing what we can to improve the health of the home, we also really do need to work on how we're approaching this stuff
Yep.
because I can
100.
tell you, I was the first person to say I wanted to burn my house to the ground and I didn't, and I'm still here and I'm okay. So
Right. There are ways to not burn your house to the ground. And we're here to help you find that way.
exactly. Well, awesome, Rachel. Thank you so much for coming on. This was such a fun conversation. How can people find you, connect with you, and work with you?
Yes, thank you so much. This was so fun. So you can find me on Instagram at Rachel Klein, Klein and underscore CO, like Colorado. And I'm part of the Goodacre group at Mile High Modern, and you can find me at goodacreproperties.com.
Awesome. Well, thanks again. And I will link all this in the show notes. So anyone who wants to connect with Rachel, just scroll down and you will find all of her info. All right,
Amazing.
Rachel.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks so much for tuning in to the Awakening Spaces podcast. If you're ready to take what you've learned and start applying it to your own home, then there's a few ways that we can support you. On our website, you can find a collection of free and paid guides and courses that will walk you through everything from designing a healthy home to choosing safe materials and reducing mold, chemical, and EMF exposure. And if you're looking for more personalized guidance, then we also offer one-on-one consulting and design support, where we act as your owner's representative to help you plan, manage, and execute your new build or renovation project with confidence. You can explore all of these offerings on our website at awakeningspaces.com. And if this podcast has helped you in any way, we would be so incredibly grateful if you would like, subscribe, and share this podcast so that it can reach more people. Until next time, thank you so much for listening and being here and stepping into what it means to be an awakened homeowner.